Hi, I'm Natalie Jill, fat loss expert turned lifestyle and high performance coach. Welcome to Listen Up, the podcast. On this podcast, I do what I do best, taking complicated information that is relevant to us now and breaking it down simply with actionable steps you can implement to level up your life. I also regularly interview some of the most inspiring and courageous men and women on the planet who, at their worst, learned how to achieve success greater than anything they ever dreamed possible, creating everything from nothing. If you are new here, I encourage you to go back and listen from episode 1, when this podcast was previously called Leveling Up, for the full transformative experience. Recently on my trip to Maui, I met Josh Bezoni, and I was fascinated by how humble and down-to-earth he is, especially knowing that he had created a business, BioTrust, that he grew from 0 to 100 million year one. You heard me right. But what makes it so fascinating is that he had built and failed several times before. He'd had many setbacks and had to start over. And he bounced back time and time again from no's and setbacks. In fact, his journey is super unique, but the lessons he's learned and shares on this episode, they'll sound quite familiar because they are the clues to why he is such an epic success now. There's a theme in what he shares that you've heard with many success stories. So today, Josh is super open with us. He shares a lot. He gives some great advice, some great tips. And know that now, not only is he an entrepreneur, an angel investor, a startup advisor, a philanthropist, but you are going to learn so much from him today. Enjoy the episode. Enjoy the conversation with Josh. Today on Listen Up, I've got my new friend, Josh Bezoni, and I can't wait to interview him today because he created BioTrust. He co-founded BioTrust, and he brought it from 0 to $100 million in a year, which is just unbelievably amazing in itself. I have so many questions there. And now he recently sold it. But when I was talking to him about this huge accomplishment, he shared with me how he'd had some epic failures before, some really epic failures that really brought him down. And I'm so curious about that and how he dug himself out of that, how he ended up turning something so epic around, and how he created this. So thank you so much for being here today, Josh.
Thank you for having me, Natalie.
So take us back. I want to kind of go way back to the beginning. Like, your kid, did you want to be an entrepreneur? What was your ambition in life initially?
Wow. So my parents ran this little hardware store in Mount Pleasant, Iowa. It's like 7,000 people. So I always grew up around business. Mm-hmm. And I hated it at the time because I had to work since I was like 5 years old, but because it was a family business. But looking back, it was a huge blessing because I learned that business wasn't scary. And I think so many people, if they haven't grown up with it, they're fearful about becoming an entrepreneur. What about health insurance? What about, all these different things? And it's easier just to get a job. It's more secure. And so anyway, I didn't have a lot of that because my parents ran a business. We ran the business together. But I did the lawn mowing services, the snow removal services, painting company.
So you grew up kind of understanding entrepreneurism, which is interesting because you're my age. You're close to my age. I'm 50. I think you're a couple years younger than me, 48. Yeah. So in our generation, it was just expected. You go to school, you go to college, you get a job, a job. Like we didn't, entrepreneur was sort of the weird thing. So you had a different experience because you were living in it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Were your parents encouraging you to think outside the box on how to earn, or was this all your idea when you said you were doing snow blowing and things like that younger?
Yeah. I didn't want to work for my parents, for one thing. So I would try to do anything to get out of that. But also you could make so much more money, like painting houses. I would hire my friends. We'd have a great time all summer running around, getting tan and painting houses. And there's some funny stories there. And so I would make a lot more money being an entrepreneur. And I didn't, working for $7.50 or $10, whatever the minimum wage was then, just didn't make any sense.
Yeah. So that's good. So it's interesting, kind of by default, your parents trained you because they said you're working for us and your only way out was to do something else. So you didn't have to. Interesting.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I love that. Okay. So you had it in your blood already. You were starting this. Talk to me about, did you go to college and what was your first like big entrepreneurial hit?
Yeah, I went to college. I went to Western Illinois University for a few years and, I painted houses to put myself through college. So I paid for it all myself.
So your parents were not going to pay for it?
No,
Okay.
no. So I paid for my own, and then I transferred to a school, Central College in Iowa,
Mm-hmm.
closer to home, and played football there, and was always doing, like I did door to door salesmen for a while, like selling knives and in Equinox stuff, and while I was in college, so I was always doing something entrepreneurial the
And you
whole
were
time.
learning selling. You learned how to sell.
Yes, learned how to sell. And then when I graduated college, one of my big mentors was a guy named Bill Phillips. He owned a company called EAS. And so EAS created, all these products like Myoplex, protein powders. They were kind of the first company to have a real like protein powder on the
Yeah, they were the
market.
original protein bar too. I remember they tasted like
Yeah.
bricks, but they were the original.
Yes. Yes. And Bill Phillips, my mentor, had started Metrex,
Yeah.
and then he started EAS. So my first job out of school,
Myoplex, remember? I remember that
yeah.
was like my
So
first protein shake.
yeah. I got a biology degree. I wanted to get a business degree, but my dad said business degrees are really easy. So you have to do something hard, because I thought maybe I'd do pre-med or be a physical therapist or something. And out of school, my first job was with Bill Phillips in Colorado. So I moved from Iowa, drove my 1987 Toyota Corolla with like 200,000 miles on it. It had no heater on it, no heater in the car. So I drove to Colorado, which was freezing with no heater, and dropped my resume off. And within the day, I got a job at EAS, which is like the mecca of supplements in the US. It was like the place to be.
Which is interesting in itself, because you just said you were a huge fan of his. He was kind of like a mentor. And then it's almost like you attracted that. You were so focused on what is he doing? And then you end up working with him.
Yeah, I drove out to Golden, Colorado just to try to get a job, and showed up and dropped my resume off.
Wow.
With no real plan. I stayed with my aunt and uncle for a while, but I had no real plan besides that.
That's gutsy.
Yeah.
But they probably loved it.
Yeah. And I was 22. So it's great. I had nothing to lose. And there, they worked with like Brad Pitt and Demi Moore and Sylvester Stallone. And I'm a kid off the farm, just put into this whole new world. And it
literally was off the farm.
literally off the farm, literally. And I had a biology degree. So I started learning how to develop supplements and, vitamins and minerals and protein powders and creatine products and all these things. So I helped with that while I was
What
there.
were you doing for them first? Did they take you on as an intern, or what was your actual job role there?
Product development. Made $22,500 the first year, which is crazy. And then they bumped me up. I became a manager, and a few years later, I was making like 48,000. And I remember that because when they sold the company, Bill sold the company, and I think he made like $500 million out of all of his exits from the company. Mm-hmm. And he called me up to his office, and I was going to pitch him on funding my own company, right? So I was all nervous, and I go up there, and he basically just turned me down and said, "No, I did this on my own. You've got to figure out how to do this on your own." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh!" So I left the company, and I had
which was actually probably a gift of him to do that, if you think about it.
Yeah, I would have it wouldn't have been the same.
Yeah,
with someone else's money. So I started my own supplement company, and at the time I had no money, so I took out. At the time, you could take out credit cards. I took out 10 credit cards.
Wow. All
at the same time from 10 different companies, and they each approved me for $10,000 based on my job salary that I just had quit.
This is brilliant. I love it. Okay.
I would not recommend this to
No, but I
people.
love what's the word? The gumption, just that you were so committed to your vision. It didn't matter to you. You're like, I'm going to find the funding somehow.
Yeah. Well, I went to banks and did a, business proposal and met with bankers, and they literally like laughed me out of the bank because at 24, I looked like I was 17 probably. And they just patted me on the head. They said this internet thing is a phase and a fad.
Aww.
And it's, you can't run a company on the internet, because this was like 1999 or 2000.
It's kind of like if right now somebody went in saying they want to build something on a blockchain or something. It's like only a very small % believe in that. And then you got a lot of doubters. So that makes sense that internet was still very new then.
Yeah. So no one believed in it. And I took these credit cards and bought product. And the first product I created was a brain supplement. So like, they're really popular now, but back then it was one of the first brain supplement products to help people mentally focus. And
like a nootropic type of thing?
Yeah, like Alpha Brains out there from On End, and there's tons of brain supplements out there, nootropic. So I was one of the first ones to actually do this. And I decided to market it to golfers because I thought golfers really need to focus, and they're crazy. If something will work for them, they'll spend thousands of dollars on this product.
Smart.
And so I marketed it to golfers. I rented an email list, went out to this email list selling this product to golfers. And the first weekend I launched it, I did $48,000 in revenue.
Wow. Okay. So wait, back up one second. You said you rented an email list. So like you found somebody that had a big email list and then asked if you could send an email and paid them?
Yes. So at the time, I think it was bettergolf.net, and they had all these golfers that read this online newsletter.
Okay.
And so I rented a solo email. It was $4,000. I can't believe I still remember all this stuff, but it was $4,000, and it brought in $48,000. Now, I earned previously at my job the year before at EAS, I earned $48,000.
Wow, exactly that.
I earned the exact same amount over a weekend. And
okay,
I thought,
did you write your own copy and I'm assuming you did all that yourself. Like you wrote what you wanted in the email. You knew exactly how to speak to people.
Yes, I learned how to write copy when working for Bill Phillips. I used to write some copy for Bill. And it's one of the best skills I ever learned how to do is write sales copy to sell products.
So how cool. And I'm imagining as you're going through this process, if you would run it by anyone, they thought you were crazy. Like what are you doing? Why would you you're borrowing all this money and now you're going to put 4,000 on? So how did you deal with that when like you're telling somebody, or maybe you weren't telling anyone, were you getting that doubt from other people? And were you second guessing yourself?
I remember, so I quit EAS, which was like my dream job, and everyone thought I had the best job in the world. And I quit, told my mom, she told my aunt called me right when I was driving home from quitting. And she said, she just reamed me out. She's like, you're a fool. What are you going to do about health insurance? You had the best job. You know, your uncle and I are like, think you're crazy. Like, this is foolish. And I pulled over and just thought, I just screwed up my entire life.
Whoa.
And then I proceeded to do the $48,000 in one weekend, like maybe a month later. And so I was a huge relief more than anything, but it was also a sign. I'm very into signs and you know, manifestation.
Yeah.
And when I got the same amount in that weekend from my previous salary, I just thought that was a huge sign.
It's a huge sign. And I hope people listening are really picking up on the part you just said about your aunt, because I think relatives and friends, they're well-meaning, but when they speak that over people and us, it does create self-doubt and it does stomp on vision. And I know, and you know to be true. And I think most of our entrepreneurial friends will say vision drives everything. When you're like committed to your vision, and it's dangerous what people can say and what we let people tell us or what we take on to believe.
Sure. Now I always encourage people, even if it's I don't think it's a great idea. I encourage them. And I say things like, you might want to keep your job and do this in the evening until it gets legs under it. Or do it on the weekends. And then when it gets legs, leave the job. You don't have to burn the boat, burn the bridges like I did. But, if that's your calling, you can do that too.
Yeah. Okay. So you make $48,000. It's a huge sign. You're like, your aunt's wrong. Now you're like, okay, I'm on to something. What do you do next? What happens next?
Okay. So I hire my sister who worked for me for like 10 years, which has its ups and downs. Although many years later, we just sold a company, which we'll get to. And I gave my sister a nice check from helping me out in the beginning. So that was really cool. But anyway, I started a company selling products, and we were shipping it out of my sister's garage, okay, in the suburbs. So her HOA had strict rules about selling. You couldn't run any type of home business out of the neighborhood. And so one day, the HOA president is knocking on the door, and my sister Molly's talking to him, and she's calling for me to come up because we had like 12, 15 customer service reps in the basement working. We had people packing stuff in our garage. We had like 20 some employees in the house working, and a big semi truck pulls up with product right as the HOA president's at the front door. And we had said, no, we're not. It's just a little eBay company. It's no big deal. And then all of a sudden this huge semi pulls up and starts unloading pallets of product. So we got kicked out of my sister's house, and we bought our first 5,000 square foot office down the street in Arvada, Colorado.
Were you ever nervous during this? Like, am I making a mistake? And how did you stomp on that voice? Like, how did you stay so committed to no, this is happening. This is growing. I'm doing this.
Um, I was actually scared to death. I just pushed through it, but I also wasn't married and didn't have children, so I didn't have a whole lot to lose. I mean, I grew up, I moved to Colorado with a couple $100, so I didn't have a whole lot to lose in my mind.
Okay.
So it was all upside.
So it didn't feel risky. It felt like if this doesn't work, I'm back where I was.
Yeah, and I think entrepreneurship, it attracts a certain type of risk taker. You have to be willing to risk things. And even people who aren't quote unquote risk takers, they have to push themselves a little bit through the fear to be able to run their own business. So, yeah.
So was it all uphill from there? Tell us what happened. How did you grow this? What happened? And then I know that there was a twist. So talk to us about what happened.
Yeah. So at first it was great, but I knew enough to be dangerous. So I knew enough to how to market online. And back then there was no canned spam laws. So you could rent email lists, just like people, if you could pick up the yellow pages or white pages and just randomly email people, and there was no canned spam laws, and people would love it because it was like the Yahoo days or AOL where you've got mail, and they would write us back these long stories and say how excited they were to get emails. And now there's so much email that people freak out. But then you could rent these email lists really inexpensively. And so I learned how to do that and start selling my products. In the first year of business, we did 3 million in revenue.
Wow.
In my sister's house. And
it was just you and your sister?
Yeah. Well, we had customer service reps and, it was a handful of us. And my net profits from that were $1 million. I had 33% net profits. So I made $1 million when I was 25 or 6.
Wow.
And that was great, but it was also bad at the same time because I didn't know about accounting. I didn't know about taxes. I didn't know about sales tax. I didn't know a lot. I knew how to sell and how to fulfill orders and so.
And now you thought you were a millionaire. Now you're like, I'm a millionaire. I made $1 million.
But then I did. But then, you have to buy more product and then you have to pay, taxes on that money. So out of $1 million, you have to pay like 400,000. And so pretty soon me thinking I'd hit the lottery was awesome, but there wasn't very much money in the bank account because I didn't know how to do accounting and how to finance, how to proper finance and everything. So anyway, there was a big learning curve there, but I hired people and pushed through it and learned. And then we ran that company for about 10 years or so in Colorado. And I grew it to $40 million a year.
Wow.
In revenue. And this was in, gosh, what year was this? Maybe 2008.
Okay.
2009.
So
and
right at the stock market and housing market crash time.
Yes. Then everything crashed all over the US with the housing market. And it really hurt the business. We were too focused in one channel. The media, everything just fell apart. And then one day, this was a very interesting day. So one of my heroes, I have a lot of heroes, but one of my heroes is Oprah Winfrey. I think she's amazing.
I love Oprah. She's on my vision board every year.
And all she does is she does a lot of amazing things. And so one day I'm walking into my office and this guy comes up and says, "Are you Josh Bezoni?" And I said, "Yes." And he goes, "Oh," and he gives me paperwork and leaves. I'm like, "Oh, no, what is this?" And I open it up and it said, "You are being basically sued by Oprah Winfrey."
What? For what?
And so
I love her. Don't make me not like her. What happened?
No, turns out very good.
Okay.
So I'm like, what is going on? Like, Oprah's my hero, but she knows who I am, I guess. That part's cool. But turns out there's affiliates, and one of our affiliates that was only doing tiny amount of sales was using her picture in ads, and we had no clue.
Oh, wow.
So she had gone after a bunch of companies that were using her picture in ads. And so we found the affiliate, cut them off immediately. But then we were also sitting there going, oh no. And this lawsuit was dragging on for quite a while the company was struggling with the economy crashing and everything else. And so previously, like a year or two before that, Oprah had a TV show called The Big Give. And one of my friends, Cameron Johnson, was on it, and they came to Denver and they were helping out an orphanage. As part of this TV show, it was only on for one season. And we went down and donated like a $25,000 check or something, and were briefly on the TV show. But as soon as her lawyers found out that I'd given to her charity, like the Angel Network, and helped out with the TV show, they dropped it immediately. So and it was like a big lawsuit. So I'm sitting here going, wow, a good deed that I did 2 years before or something,
Wow.
like really came back and saved me in this situation.
And they figured that out on their own. They didn't even, or did you tell them that you had donated this?
My lawyers ended up telling them this, and I didn't even think about it at the time to mention it.
It's amazing.
Yeah. And so dropped it. If I ever meet Oprah, I'm going to tell her the story.
Yeah, it's such a great story.
She got a place in Maui, and
such a great story.
I might run into her sometime. But I learned, and early on, I learned too from my parents that whatever business I ran from then on, I put a big charity component to it. So when we started BioTrust, every time someone placed an order, we fed a hungry child for a day through No Kid Hungry. Mm-hmm. And we also donated to the Make-A-Wish. We granted a wish every week at BioTrust. And we ended up granting hundreds and hundreds of wishes through the Make-A-Wish Foundation and donating like millions and millions of meals to kids.
Wow.
And so I did that because a lot of times too, when I started doing well business-wise, I had a lot of deservance issues. You know how some people, they do well and they kind of sabotage themselves mm-hmm. because they don't think they're worth it?
Sure.
Well, I had some of that in me. And so when I started adding a charity component, it really helped them. And I wanted to do that from my heart, but it also gave me a bigger mission that I was helping other people and not just myself. And I really started focusing on our team, making sure our team was taken care of. And so the more I would do for other people, it's like the more success came in.
The more you focused out. Okay. I have some questions because I have a lot more questions about that, but I want to back up for a minute. When you were in the first company and you had made that money, and then 2007, 2008, the lawsuit, all these things are start happening. What happened to that company and what happened to your belief set? Because obviously you learned a lot that then went on for BioTrust, but what was the period of time? And did you start having self-doubt? I shouldn't be an entrepreneur. What did that feel like? And how did you bounce yourself back up from that?
I started getting distracted at the time, and I hired an executive team to run the company. And then the economy crashed and the lawsuit and all these things. And one of things, when you take your eye off the ball as an entrepreneur, it's not a good thing. There was just things going on I didn't know about. And the company ended up basically crashing and burning. I could have kept it going, but I was just ready for something new. And after the lawsuit was settled, and the economy was so bad and other things had just happened with the executive team, I just wanted to start fresh. And so we didn't officially go bankrupt and everyone was paid, but I went to being, doing very well to basically losing almost everything.
Yeah. And then what did you believe about yourself when that was happening?
I thought, man, I really screwed this up. I'm a failure. Am I going to have to go back and get a regular job? How can I ever rebound from this? Because it was really difficult time. Trying to save face because friends and everyone who looked at me as successful, now I was like basically going out of business. It was a tough time, but also I knew I had to like pick myself up. Mm-hmm. Sports helped a lot. I played a lot of sports. So I know like when you lose, it's not the end. You got to pick yourself up. I'm still very young at that point. Mm-hmm. And so I moved to Austin, Texas, and just started completely fresh.
So tell me about the time on that. And I'm sorry, I know I'm digging a little bit here, but there's people listening right now that are stuck in that down spiral. And in my story, another episode, but 2007, 2008, I had that same rock bottom and was in debt and all the things, losing my home, everything falling apart. So you and I were not alone in that. There were a lot of people, the whole world shook up then to them. How long was that space? Or was it a year? Was it a month? Was it 5? Like, what was that space of that downtime? And what are some of the things that you did to get yourself reminded of what sports is and of why you need to pick up and keep going?
Well, it was probably a year and a half to 2 years that I was kind of down and out. Mm-hmm. And a year and a half to 2 years. And I think I was either going to go back and work for someone, which I thought would be a complete failure at that point, or I was just going to I called up mentors. That's what I did. Mm-hmm. I called up my friends like Joe Polish, Dean Graziosi, friends that I've met over the years, and just reached out for help, which is tough sometimes for entrepreneurs. and friends helped lifting me up at that time.
So when you asked them for help, was it like, hey, I'm going through this space right now. What are some things you did to get out of it? Like talk through the kind of help that they gave you or that you asked for, because, and this is really critical, Josh, and because there's so many people I know that this last 2 years, like rock their world. So they're having this conversation.
Well, first of all, it's mindset. Like you've got to change your mindset. You've got to change your state completely. So if you have the recurring loops of, I'm a failure, or I'm not worth it, or you have to change that. You have to snap yourself out of it by physically, like moving your body, like Tony Robbins says, changing your state, coming up with mantras, all these things that people think sound silly. But if you're in a like negative, depressive state, you can't really do anything.
Yeah,
so you have to start with yourself. And then they just gave me advice like, I never asked for money. I never borrowed money. I think that's a bad idea if at all possible. Sometimes you have to. But I had enough to start over. And they just said, why don't you go back to the basics? Why don't you start small and just do what you know that works? Get rid of all the overhead, the buildings, the employees. Unfortunately, everyone suffered from this, and just literally start over with something simple that you know how to do, that you know works, and do it just you and like one other person, and start all over. So I sold my car. Sold my house. I lost a lot of money selling my house at that point. And I basically, the only thing that saved me was, merchant processors have a reserve on your money. So they hold back a certain amount of money. So when this was all the dust settled, they sent me a check with the reserve amount from the merchant account, which I'd basically forgotten about. And so they sent me back, I think it was like $100,000. So I basically had $100,000 to my name.
But I believe that was all a sign. Like it was because you'd made this switch. Now you were clear. And then that was like a reinforcement.
Yes. Yeah. So you got to get your mind right. And then you got to help come up with a strategy and reach out to friends, mentors to come up with that strategy. Because I wasn't even thinking clearly at that time.
No.
Yeah.
No. And I can speak for myself. I'm sure you probably felt that I had an overwhelming feeling of fake. Like, oh my gosh, I met all these people when I was at my high. Like, do they really like me? Like I had this whole, like it was hard to be vulnerable with people and share, like, I'm struggling, I'm going through this, because I thought they wouldn't like me anymore. I wouldn't fit in anymore. So I wonder if you had that. Fraud. Yeah. I totally felt like a fraud. Like I'm not worthy of these people.
When I started in business, I was 24, 25. So I felt like a fraud right from the beginning because I thought I was too young. And then that just kind of carried, even though I was doing well and I always had this kind of like, I'm not really a businessman. I never got an MBA. I never went to college for business. I'm not a real business guy. I'm just like kind of an entrepreneur, a low-level entrepreneur. And I don't think I actually started feeling like I was competent and confident in business, and which is crazy, until maybe like 3 or 4 years ago.
Wow.
And we'd already done like a ton of business online and but I pushed through that. And a lot of it, again, is this mental work. So I used to listen to Tony Robbins, Personal Power 2, Tony's one of my mentors, and I actually met him several times now and spent a week with him and a small group of 10 people in Fiji. So I think I manifested that. And your mindset, it's so important to believe in yourself and to get over those blocks that we all have, and the self-sabotaging, and then I'm not worth it. And that's like 80% of entrepreneurship is coming over all this negative chatter in your brain.
So now you start BioTrust and you have got like a whole clear new perspective on things, and you're taking advice. You're starting small, like, okay, no overhead, no this, no that. I'm assuming that's how you started. And did you start initially with the idea of I'm going to give back?
Yes. Well, I was in Texas and I'm pretty introverted and I don't like to be out, and I don't like to have conferences or any of this stuff. It's not my style. And I kept being called right when I got to Austin. I was living on Lake Travis in an apartment. I kept being called to like have a conference. It's beautiful here. There's a hotel. I live next to a hotel. You could have a conference there. Mm-hmm. And so I was like called again. If people are hearing or feeling that they should be called to something, don't ignore that, because I'm so glad I actually followed through on this like calling. So I had a conference. I'd met Tim Ferriss years ago.
You hosted the conference? Like you hosted? Yes, okay, got it.
I hosted it, and I charged like $1,000 a person, and I paid for everything. I made no money on this.
Okay.
And so Tim Ferriss I'd met years ago at a conference, and he and I had stayed in touch. And actually, Tim Ferriss wrote the book, The 4-Hour Workweek, which is a huge bestseller, and he's written many since then. And I called a favor in and asked him if he would be like the main presenter at this conference. He'd be the keynote. And Tim was selling a book called The 4-Hour Body at that time. So I brought all of these fitness entrepreneurs into Austin, charged them all $1,000, took them out on boats and paid for all the food, and just had this great time. And we had Bill Phillips speak at the conference. I called all my favorites in: Joe Polish, Dean Graziosi, all these marketing legends, all came in, presented at this conference. I met my business partner, Joel, there, which we went on to sell over $1 billion worth of products together through BioTrust over the next 11 years. I don't know if I ever would have met Joel if I didn't have that conference. We met all of our affiliates who got behind the brand later on and helped us grow BioTrust really quickly. And it was all from this one conference. And I only had 2 of them my whole life. And like all that's good in my life right now can be tracked back to that decision where I did not want to do the conference, but I was called to it. And I had the conference, called in favors. And at that conference, I went up there and did a presentation on how I basically screwed up my business and how my life was kind of like at rock bottom right now.
The part of the hero's journey, but you didn't go back up. You just gave like, this is what happened.
Well, I was still sitting in it. I was still rock bottom.
You were just vulnerable, but it made people like you, I'm sure.
I thought after that presentation, no one would want to touch me with a 10-foot pole to do business with. But everyone did the exact opposite. By being vulnerable and authentic, everyone like wanted to rally around and help. It's crazy. And so
there's so much goodness in what you just shared, because like we all get those like nagging, like this thing that just keeps coming up. You're like, why am I being told to do that? Or why do I have this, like the conference like made no sense for you, but it like just kept coming up. And then I just got chills. Like that completely changed everything.
Yes. So at the end of the conference, got the calculator out to see how much I lost or made or whatever, just praying I didn't lose a lot of money. And at the end, I made $7 from the conference after everything was paid for.
After all the work. Okay.
After all the work, $7. But first of all, 7 is a lucky number. Second of all, so much good came out of that. So you don't have to be profitable with all you do, but also just putting all that goodness out in the world. Everyone loved the conference. Everyone had a ball. We played on the lake. They got a lot of knowledge from that. And then I met Joel, my business partner. He's amazing at selling ebooks. So he was selling $10 million a year of ebooks when I met him. Wow. He had one part-time employee. And when you sell ebooks, you're just selling air, Yep. There's no hard cost to it. So he was making crazy profits. And I pitched Joel. And first of all, he and I did an ebook together that I had written. And I think it did over $2 million in a week with all those affiliates that everyone promoted around the country at the same time. And so it did $2 million in revenue. And then we paid about half of that out to them. And then Joel and I split something. And so then I had around $500,000. So then I pitched Joel, hey, with all these affiliates that I've just met, all these people from this conference, with your knowledge on marketing, instead of selling ebooks, let's build a real brand, supplement brand like Bill Phillips did at EAS that I worked for. And it's something that we could grow like a real company, do a lot of good with, hire people so they can support their families. And then we can eventually exit this company like Bill did and do really well. And I said, man, maybe we can even sell the company for like $10 million in 5 years or something like that. And Joel completely turned me down. He's like, no, he's like, I'm killing it with ebooks right now. I don't want to take on all the hassle. And so then I was completely deflated. I didn't want to do it myself because sometimes with a partner, if someone's really good at something you're not, and you're going to make a good team, and we already did an ebook project together and we worked really well together. So we became partners. You have to be really careful who you choose as partners, by the way, it's like a marriage. But anyway, so we started BioTrust. All these great products. Our first product was like a grass-fed protein powder, different flavors, delicious. We launched that. And I think we did $1 million the first week.
Wow.
With all the affiliates. And we're like, we're really onto something here. We thought we'd do a couple $1 million the first year. And then we started ordering tons of inventory. I put in $500,000 into BioTrust.
So basically all the money you just made from the ebook.
I risked it all. Everything I had, I put into the company to buy inventory to start. There was like 3 or 4 of us running this company, and it took off like a rocket because we had no competition at the time. There was none of these other companies out there. If you ask most of these online supplement companies these days, like BioTrust was a real inspiration for them. They followed what we did and they kind of emulated and modeled things we've done. And
well, you use the online marketing strategy of ebooks and copy and affiliates and all that, but toward product, and nobody else was doing that yet.
Yeah, and a lot of old direct response copy stuff and strategies we just brought online because it was still early. And so Joel and I were looking at each other like, this is taking off like a rocket. And then our first full year in business was a blur. We were hiring people from other companies that have done what we wanted to do. I have a whole hiring strategy I could talk about. But anyway, the first full year in business, we did over 100 million in revenue. So wow. It was insanity. Like we had to bring in people that knew what they were doing, like real high level CFOs.
Because neither one of you had done that really before. Like you both were, he was just one person, ebooks, and this was all new.
Yeah. And so we gave equity to top employees to draw them away from other companies. And so like our operations guy was in charge of North American operations for Amazon. He just got tired of traveling all over for Amazon. And so we told him he could work virtually from home so he could be with his family. And we gave him equity and paid him about a third of what he was making at Amazon.
Wow.
And he came and just like fine-tuned our whole operations.
Wow.
And then we did the same in tech and in all these different positions. One, because the company was doing so well, we had the profits to be able to hire amazing people, but then bringing them in, like really build a team. And it was crazy. It was the best times, but it was also like 80 plus hours a week and things breaking and fixing things.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
How did you check your ego? Because you'd already been through kind of a big ego crash before. And I would imagine as this new business is crushing and you're like just generating so much, did you have that fear again? Like, were you starting to get an ego? How did you keep that in check?
I had gotten knocked down so low that the ego for me wasn't ever a problem. It still isn't because I had learned that when things are good, they're not always going to be good. And even at BioTrust, things started off great. And there was a big dip later on, which I'm sure we'll talk about. My business partner, Joel's 8 years younger than me. He hasn't been through any dips. And so I was like the guy always playing defensively and always kind of checking Joel, like, no, we can't do that. You know, I ran a supplement company before. That'll get you in trouble. You have to do everything by the book, all these different things. And from the very beginning, I put in that charity components right from the very beginning. Mm-hmm. Make a wish and no kid hungry.
Yeah. And I believe that's a big reason your company's done so well is because you had a huge charity component.
I do too. Doing conscious capitalism, where everyone benefits and you add in a charitable component, it's just blessed us so much. I don't think any of the good things that happened at BioTrust would have happened if we wouldn't have done that.
Yeah. So how was navigating with a partner? You mentioned it's like a marriage. Did you have ups and downs with him? Did you have to go to like business partner counseling? How do you work through that type of thing?
We should have gone to business partner counseling.
Do they have such a thing? Maybe that's your next business.
Yeah. Our CFO was really the guy in the middle. Okay. So fast forward, BioTrust has done extremely well. 4 years in, we're still doing over 100 million. We decided to sell the company because that was the goal from the very beginning, build an awesome, trusted brand. And
your goal was 10 million originally. So that's interesting.
Yes. Yeah. And so then we went to market, didn't know what we didn't know. When people go to buy you, they bring in a troop of lawyers and analysts and everything you can imagine. And they just tear your company apart and look for any risk. And so we had not been prepared for that at all. And so suffice it to say, 4 years later, we got to the 5-yard line of a company buying us. And it was for well over $100 million. And it fell apart.
Mm.
And so like on the 5-yard line, and Joel and I had already had in our mind the company was sold and we were going to roll over some equity and we were going to, retire and live happily ever after. And Joel was looking at planes and, stuff like this. Right.
Yeah.
And then it falls apart. And then there's a lot of like kind of finger pointing, and Joel and I's relationship, which was awesome until then, like really suffered because we were both so deflated and had worked so hard. The analogy would be like running a marathon with like a 50-pound pack on your back, and you finally cross the finish line. And they said that didn't count. You got to start over. Like that's what it felt like.
Yes.
And so then we were just discouraged.
Because you knew how to build it differently in order to sell it.
Yes, completely differently. So over the next 4 years, we had to like remodel the whole company based on the feedback that we got from different people who looked at it. They wanted us to diversify our channels. We couldn't be just focused in one channel. They wanted different products. They didn't want any weight management products at all, which were a big portion of our company.
Why is that? It's just because it's harder to advertise or sell, or?
Yes, but also those customers, people who buy a lot of weight loss products, tend to jump from company to company because sometimes they don't change the actual things that, we would try to coach them on nutrition habit changes and exercise, but a lot of people would just want to take the product and do no other lifestyle changes. And of course that doesn't work.
That's good feedback to know for my own fat loss business.
Yeah. And so the customers weren't what they call sticky. They wouldn't stay around for a long time. And what we learned with our other products, like our protein powders and our probiotics and our fish oil products, they would stick. These people would reorder for years. Whereas the weight management products, they've kind of come and go in a very short amount of time.
That makes a lot of sense. That's great. Yeah.
And so we got rid of all of our weight management products, which was like $60 million in revenue, and replaced them with a bunch of new products like collagen, which became hot at the time, and a lot of different flavors, and rebuilt the company over 4 or 5 years. And then also we learned at the time that they wanted Joel and I to go with the company when we sold originally. And Joel and I are sitting there thinking, we're going to become employees after being entrepreneurs for this long. It's going to be terrible. Reporting to a CEO, like having to be in meetings, having no real control. And so the second time around, we decided to hire people and replace us like 3 or 4 years before we actually.
Oh, so smart.
sold.
So smart.
But I don't want to discount how difficult that time was. At one time, Joel called me up and said, I will sell you my half of the company for $1. He's like, I'm just done.
Wow.
He's like, we had worked ourselves 80, 90 hours a week. He had small children. He was used to running an ebook company that he worked like 5 hours a week. And
so I'm sure he was really questioning everything. Yeah. Like I was crushing, this was easy, no stress. Yeah.
Now there's products and manufacturing issues and shipping. And, we had 200 and some employees, and it just became like this big thing and we just needed a break, like a lot of entrepreneurs, we had no work-life balance. He and I had a standing call every day at 2 a.m. Like we were just working ourselves like to death.
2 a.m.
Yeah. So, when people see now that we actually sold the company on Christmas Eve, everyone's like, they don't understand the 11 years of work and the ups and downs and the risks and the burnout and all the things that a lot of entrepreneurs never talk about. They just go on, a show and they talk about selling a company for billions of dollars or something, and they don't talk about the downside of it.
No, gosh, it's so, and what I love about your story and you, like I just met Josh recently in Maui. I was in Maui and I met him, and you're so down to earth and humble. And you would never know that you've created what you've created because there's no arrogance about you. There's no ego. You're just such a generous, giving person. And I love that about you. And I think that hearing your story, it makes so much sense. Like you really started from that place and then you just kind of got sidetracked along the way, but all these lessons have brought you back to why I believe you're so successful now, because you came back to yourself. Like you're truly who you always were, versus who you were trying to be. And it's worked. I'm so curious, like what does your aunt say now? The one that told you that she was disappointed in you?
well, I think after we did like 100 million the first year, my mom had told her that. I think she was just super proud of that, you know?
Yeah, that's amazing. I love
Yeah.
that. What are some, if you were just to kind of, I know it's a lot of in the journey, but if you were to give somebody right now that's like feeling down, like just kind of like 5 things, like they're feeling like a failure. They're feeling like their business idea just fell apart. They had a hard, whatever, just like 5 things you want them to know. What would those be?
One is a lot of people feel like a fraud, or they feel like they're just kind of faking it. And I know top level entrepreneurs that feel that way too. There's very few people that I've met that are actually extremely confident in their own skin. And I mean, you're talking about the top of the top of the top, the Tony
Yeah.
Robbins and people like that. A lot of people have tons of doubt. A lot of people feel like they're kind of faking it, and they're living the Instagram life where people think they're really successful when behind the scenes they're not.
True.
I would just say that everyone struggles, and you don't have to fake anything. You should just go out there and be authentic from where you're at.
Yeah, what I love, like,
young,
just I think about that story when you said you put together this event and like you were in kind of in your rock bottom spots when when this happened, and you just didn't have an agenda. Then I'm just doing this. It's a give. I want to learn. You like your agenda was probably I want to learn too,
yeah,
but it was a give, and then you just shared where you were. Like I had this business, and it's interesting how many people connected with you because of that. They didn't judge. They
yes,
connected. They felt your heart. They felt you understood them.
yeah. And I coach a lot of entrepreneurs. And a lot of them are younger male and female entrepreneurs, and they really struggle because they're young and they don't think that that they have the credentials to be out there and to talk. And I say, just share where you're really at in life and say, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm learning, and come along and learn with me. You don't have to pretend that you're, an expert, and if you're not, and people resonate with that.
Yes. And it's hard. It's so hard for people to be real. It feels like and I think it's
Yeah.
because of the Instagram world and that we're comparing, but if people would just be them, people do resonate with them a lot better.
Yeah. And I just got back from like a men's retreat I went to last weekend. I sold a company and went to a men's retreat all about like being your authentic self, and like sharing with other men, like your stories and your struggles. So I just got off a weekend. I'm really into this, like being authentic and helping people from an authentic standpoint.
Yeah. That's so good. It's so
So
good.
that was one, but what else, what did you
So
ask?
you gave me a couple good ones, but it was 5 things that you want people to know that are in their rock bottom. You said a lot of people feel like that they're a fraud and faking it, and that everyone struggles, which is amazing. And then I also got from that, just share where you really are and come along with me.
Yeah, and ask for help. Ask
Ask
for
for
help
help.
would be another one. Find mentors and people that have done what you want to do, and have gone through. I guarantee they've gone through struggles just like you have.
Mm-hmm.
And when I shared that, when I was at my rock bottom, every person I went to my mentor said, "Oh, I did that 10 years ago. I went bankrupt." And I'm like, "You went bankrupt? I have no idea." And they're like, "Yeah, and here's how you pick yourself up. And this is part of the journey." And so it's part of the course. When you're an entrepreneur running a business, there's going to be great times and there's going to be low times. And once you understand a lot of people have gone through that, you can ask for help. So asking for help is really important.
So it's funny that you said that, Josh. What people listening might not know is I started this podcast a little over 3 years ago, and it's changed over the years, but initially it started only as stories of this type of thing. And the reason I did that, the reason I did 200 interviews of all the people you mentioned, Dean and all of them, is because I was in my own personal setbacks, and that was my way of asking for help. Like, I'm going to start a podcast and share along the journey I'm going on to ask people how they got out of this. And just like you said, 200 interviews later, I'm like seeing these same themes from people, from Joe Polish, from Dean, and I'm like, whoa, they've all been through this, which made me feel way better and got me thinking new ideas and leveling up.
Yes. Another one is you have to just get real with yourself, because there's so many times I went into like the victimality and like, poor me, and this happened. And the person who used Oprah's picture caused me so much problems, and that I never should have happened. And, all these things. And really the reality is you just got to own it. Like you just have to radical self honesty of where you're at. And no one's going to dig you out. You have to do it yourself. And so you have to like light that fire within you, because everyone can sit around. It's really easy to play the victim. And I've done that for a long time too. But everything changed when I finally just looked at myself in the mirror and said, I'm not a victim. I'm here for a reason. God didn't put me here to fail, especially with all these resources around here. I can do this, and then take like action steps I'm going to do every day and get on a routine. And getting on a routine is another one. It's just people that don't. I used to think you didn't have a morning routine or an evening routine, and you could just float through the day and just randomly kind of do things. Never, it doesn't work.
What is your morning routine? What have you learned about that? Like, do you have a routine that what is that?
I wake up in bed and I journal for 10 minutes, or I'll never do it. So I journal for 10 minutes in bed. Okay. And then I grab the book that I've always
And that's just whatever thoughts are in your mind, or like whatever you thought about overnight.
And a lot of gratitude. It's a gratitude journal where I really focus on things that I'm grateful for, because if there's one lesson I would talk about, and it seems cliche, but being grateful every day for things in your life just brings you more of that. And so many people beat themselves up all day long and look at the negative. I've done that a lot. But if you actually look at the positive and start your day off that way, it makes a huge difference.
Okay.
So gratitude journal, and I write other things in there, but it's mainly journaling. And then I read 10 minutes or 10 pages in a book, which seems crazy. But then after, a month, you've read a book. And before I'd have tons of books I'd never get to. So I just read 10 pages a day. Then I get up and do like 10 minutes of yoga, like right on my bed. So I haven't hardly left my bed.
Okay.
Then I do yoga right next to my bed, like 10 minutes. It really grounds me. And I'll do yoga / meditation at the end. I'll listen to one song for 7 minutes and I'll meditate to it.
Okay.
So then when my brain hears that song, it knows it's meditation time. And I meditate during the song. When the song's over, I'm done. Okay. So I do that every day, the same song. It's awesome, because I can't sit there. I could, but I don't like to sit there for 20 minutes twice a day and like transcendental meditation. So just 7 minutes in the morning. Then I get up, I get ready, and I work out right away. Otherwise, I won't do it.
Notice he didn't say anything about checking your phone. So that's good.
If I do check my phone because something's going on, I literally have to set a timer for 5 minutes. When I check my phone in the morning, when it goes off, I have to shut it off. Okay. So I'm like zipping through text and stuff because I know I have 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And then I'm like on to my next thing. Good. Otherwise, I'll get in.
So grounded. I think all of us get sucked into that vortex.
Then I work out, or I won't do it. I'll lie to myself and say I'll do it later, and I'll never do it. And so I have to do all the major important things first. Then I eat, and then I do my number one project that will bring me the most happiness, joy, reward in life. Very thing first, when I have the most energy.
So you'll like your list of what you need to do for work kind of things, or your personal list of joy stuff?
It's really the thing that's going to move me forward the most in life. So I'll do a 90 minutes of work on whatever that is.
Okay. Got it. So if you, for instance, when you were getting ready to sell your company, it might've been 90 minutes on focusing on stuff you had to do for that.
Yes. And like right now, I've been writing screenplays for years, and I'm working on a screenplay to get made into a movie.
So good.
And because that's something that I've always wanted to do. And if I don't time block it, I'm never going to do it. It's just going to be one of these dreams. And also I'm 48, right? So I realize I'm probably halfway through my life. And when I look at everyone else with the biohacking and everything that's happening, we can be productive a lot longer. But you don't hear about a lot of people like in their 80s and 90s doing like their major life goals. It's really rare. Mm-hmm. So I'm very well aware of that. And I'm thinking about what my legacy is and really what I want to do with my 50s and 60s.
So good. So when I was at Josh's house for dinner in Maui, and we had a bunch of people, everybody there, I think, was an entrepreneur. And we went around the room and said, we were going to share what our biggest focus for 2022 was. Remember this? And what I loved about that conversation is not one person at that table set a business goal. Everybody was speaking about something personal they wanted to achieve, some more experiences, something like just to up-level their life experience here. And I found that really fascinating, because I do believe the reason a lot of entrepreneurs are successful is because they do have that sort of in the back. That is or in the front, actually, that is their leading thing.
Yes. Yeah. No one did talk about business. It was all about how they wanted to feel and how they wanted to impact someone else. And
Yeah. And then I saw, because I started following Josh on Instagram, and he had a post of flying private. And I'm like, oh, that's on my list. I've never flown private. And he had a picture of himself doing it. And I will never forget this. You had your laptop open and a journal, and you said on that, I'm going to probably mess up how you said it, but you said, that you'll never take for granted being able to do things like that. So you use that time of expansion super wisely, and you spend that time in gratitude, in how can I help other people? And I just thought that was so magnificent. So instead of like taking that for granted, like, oh, I just get to do this, it's like, I'm going to use this time wisely to expand more.
Yes. I remember not being able to afford a coach plane ticket, on Spirit Airline or something, for years. And so now when I do fly private, I block that time out. Like, I have to do work on a project that's going to serve other people, write a script, come up with a charitable plan, anything while I'm on the plane. I don't get in there and drink champagne and fall asleep. And I just can't do that, because I think the universe, if you're not grateful, the universe checks you, and it's checked me in the past.
I love everything about it. Well, Josh, this is fantastic. I'm so excited for you. I was so happy for you. You said I finally sold the company. I remember you sent I had an IG DM from you, and I just know what that must mean to you. I can only sort of understand, but it's just absolutely incredible and such an accomplishment. So what's next? The screenplay? What else? What are you doing with your time right now? What are you focused on?
Yeah. Well, so we finally did sell the company, and it happened on Christmas Eve of all times. Like, it could have closed. It got pushed and closed on Christmas Eve, which again, I think is another beautiful sign. And we got wires that day. And you look at all your life's work from a business standpoint, and it all comes across as digits on a screen, right? And there's no one around me. And it was just me looking at a screen. And then I thought, wow, now I had this financial energy. What am I going to do with it? And the first thing I did was, I bought my niece a house, because she has these beautiful children that I love that are like my kids, because I don't have kids. And they were living in this rundown apartment, and she works for my company. So the first thing I did was buy them a house. They're still paying rent to me, but they're paying what they paid before, because I don't believe in giving you give people, they still have to contribute.
Yes.
But that was the first thing I bought, was something to invest in the family and those kids. So that was worth all those years of work just to do that.
So amazing.
It's really cool.
I absolutely love that.
Yeah. As far as what's next, we still own 20% of the company. So people have to think about that. When you build something, you can sell 80% of it. Somebody else can run it, and then they'll sell it again in 3 to 5 years. And you can get a second bite of the apple, they call it. And hopefully, we'll make even more off the second bite of the apple. So we'll have another exit in 3 to 5 years.
So good.
And a large portion is going away to various charities. I'm writing screenplays because it's a passion of mine. I was an executive producer on a film last year that just got sold. So movies are really cool, and the legacy behind them, they don't go away. So that's really cool. And I invest in 15 different companies with Joel. And so we're helping other entrepreneurs and teaching them what we've learned, and helping them avoid pitfalls and challenges, which is really cool. If they listen, it's really cool. And sometimes if they don't, that's, they might know better than us at times. So yeah, a lot of investing in people.
So good. This was so epic today, Josh. Thank you so much for doing this. I know people got a lot out of it. I got a lot out of it. Thank you so much for doing this today.
Yes. Great to see you. Hopefully we'll see you in Maui again.
Thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen in as my guest today. If you found this episode valuable, please share it with friends and on social media. I don't advertise this show, so I rely on word of mouth and reviews to get it out in the world. The biggest thank you that you can give me is leaving me a review, and a nice one, I hope, by the way. This is how others find these episodes. If you do leave me a review, be sure to message me at support@nataliejillfitness.com with a screenshot of your review, because I would love to send you a free digital download of my DSR journal as a thank you. And please don't forget to connect with me on social media at Natalie Jill Fit on Instagram and Facebook.